Was this the agua debate?
Over the years, I'd made not one, not two, but three videos on the Vaush Agua debacle. In summary, for those who missed it, Vaush was having a debate about trans people and stubbornly refused to admit that water is H2O, leading to this infamous, hilarious moment.
But let's just use the example of water. Maybe we could agree that water is H2O.
This isn't true.
That water has not always been H2O?
Yeah, all you have to do is cross the Mexican border. And over there, it's aqua.
And it really broke his brain.
Because it wasn't just whether or not it was water, it was whether it would serve the purpose of water. That's it. When people hear it's just water, they're not actually asking, is it the chemical water in its entirety? They're asking, does it serve the purpose of water? Is it functionally water?
But not only are men and women arbitrary, but so is taxonomy and even the periodic table.
Have you ever wondered why 1 with hydrogen starts over 2 and then helium is on the other side all the way over here? And then 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9? We grouped it arbitrarily in order to collect elements that have similar features.
He thinks his argument is incorrigible. Have you ever wondered why the 1 is over here and the 2 is over there? I just assumed it was some intern made a mistake and they'd already printed a few, so they just stuck with it. And I thought that was it. We'd had our laughs, we'd had our fun, and like a child who peed his pants in front of the whole school, Vaush would move on, try to forget about this embarrassing moment in his story. But no, of his own volition, Vaush decided to bring it up again.
You said there's no coherent concept of gender. Is that right? Did I get you right there?
You will not find me a definition of gender that is one. Oh God, I am pretentious.
See, Vaush is maturing. We all knew he was pretentious back then, but now even he sees it. Maybe on his deathbed he'll finally realize, I think H2O might have been water this whole time.
You said there's no coherent concept of gender. Is that right? Did I get you right there?
You will not find me a definition of gender 100% consistent and all-encompassing and has no flaws in it. There are no such things. That's true, though. That is true, though.
Is it, though? Is it really? And this statement by Vaush sort of undermines his own argument that he's about to make. For if a definition can be flawed, then it can be incorrect, i.e., it's not describing the thing that you're trying to describe. Even though Vaush tries to obfuscate, it's pretty clear that the guy he's debating is talking about the concept, not the fucking dictionary definition. In fact, he says so.
No coherent concept of gender.
A concept of gender.
If I remember correctly, the argument was about whether or not you could have a coherent definition of gender. And then he was making an argument for how there was a kind of unifying or historically accepted definition. And I said, well, the definition of a given word is going to change depending on the culture that uses it, for one.
Vaush is strawmanning because he can't engage with the actual argument. Oh, really? I thought God endowed us with dictionaries and they all read the exact same. That's obviously not his opponent's argument.
Two words that are translated to mean the same thing in different languages don't necessarily refer to exactly the same concept.
Obviously, and he's clearly talking about concepts, and that's the word that he used.
No coherent concept of gender.
It's kind of like how the word blue in English might correspond to a word in Russian that refers to a similar range of color, but a Russian speaker might use it to describe different colors than an English speaker.
Okay, here's another hypothetical. Imagine that we meet an island of people who speak, I don't know, we'll stick to Vaush's area of expertise. They speak Spanish. It's nighttime, you get to chatting, and you point up at the object in the sky, and you say, what's your word for that? They tell you it's La Luna. You say, okay, yeah, we call it the moon in English. And how do you define La Luna or the moon? And they say, it's a big surface made of cheese, it's flat, and the Earth orbits it. We're trying to describe the same concept, but their definition is objectively wrong.
Okay, so then it sounds like your view entails there are no women, because there's no true definition of woman.
No, not at all. Right? There are plenty of social constructions that I think have meaning and serve utility, even if there are no consistencies to it.
One of your arguments against the biological definition of woman was that we didn't know about chromosomes many years ago. Well, first of all, I don't think biological sex is defined in terms of chromosomes. Just use the example of water. Maybe we could agree that water is H2O. That was true even before we knew about chemistry. That was the definition of water before anybody knew anything about chemistry, before we knew about H2O. Back when Aristotle thought water was just an element. Nevertheless, it was H2O.
True. So the interesting, so for one, this actually isn't true, because unless you have the definition of water being H2O, like you understand how the molecules, the atoms work.
He's still defending this position. Not to reiterate the point ad nauseum, but it's painfully obvious to everyone except Vaush that he's talking about the objective reality, not the fucking word used to describe it.
And this is why I don't argue with the trans shit anymore, because as far as I'm concerned, if you can't understand what I'm talking about right now, you're a retard and you don't really have a right to speak in the issue.
If you don't understand that in Mexico they call water aqua, you're an idiot. What makes the clip funny is Vaush is not only attacking the wrong argument, but his attack doesn't even make sense. Agua was the worst, stupidest example you could have picked to argue against the wrong argument.
Agua, it's not aqua, right?
And we're referring to terms and definitions here.
No, I'm referring to water, the stuff that fills lakes and rivers.
He can't make it any more explicit. We're talking about terms and definitions. No, I'm talking about the thing, not the term or the definition.
Is that a drop of water on your table right there? I don't know. I haven't molecularly examined it to make sure that every single molecule, etc., you get it. Hence all the bullshit with trans people. They freak out over it. You can't change definition. For one, you can. Actually, that's all definitions were created arbitrarily.
If it wasn't patently obvious that following from this video, Vaush describes the periodic table as arbitrary, he doesn't know what the word arbitrary means. Like, he just clearly does not understand. All definitions are created arbitrarily. What a ridiculous thing to say.
At some point or another, but also, what does the definition even refer to? It certainly wasn't referring to, like chromosome batches beforehand. That's the reason why I said that gender couldn't have always referred to chromosomes, because we didn't used to think chromosomes were a thing.
Again, that isn't the argument. The argument is that the concept was always there, the objective reality, that humans are sexually dimorphic. We made an observation that men are different from women, but we didn't know why, so our definition was incorrect until we got to one that's more precise. The observation was true, it's just we didn't know where it was coming from.
What were people using to determine beforehand, before we could observe a person's, chromosomes or their sexual characteristics directly?
To use a similar example of when we actually got it wrong, we thought we observed a phenomenon, but it was actually not true. This one comes from the world of taxonomy, which Vaush in this debate also describes as arbitrary, which isn't really true either. Similar to how our definition of man and woman used to be based on anatomy historically, so did animal classification. We used to group animals in such a way that if a bunch of species had hooves, then they must be closely related. But what that didn't account for is convergent evolution. And with the DNA revolution of the 90s, we realized, for example, that hippos aren't related to rhinos, despite their similar features. In that case, our mental model, our definitions were incorrect, so we updated them. In the case of male and female, we just confirmed what we already intuitively knew, that humans are sexually dimorphic. There's men and there's women.
I mean, I don't know about you guys. I don't observe many people's sexual characteristics directly when I'm going on outside. Usually I just see like their hands and faces and stuff. So we usually have to refer to a broader set of socially informed data points, you know?
Aha, yes, you're making estimations on what the true nature of it is. Those social inferences are not a good description of the actual phenomenon. I don't have to check someone's pulse to know that they're alive. I can usually tell by them walking or talking, but maybe someone's sleeping and they look like they're dead. So the definition is not based on your inferences. So I think I've clearly demonstrated that Vaush and this doctor were having two separate debates. Now I can tackle the argument that Vaush was trying to make, that definitions can change and be whatever we want them to be. And while that's true, apples and oranges can both be apples if we really want them to be. But to quote George Box, all models are wrong, but some are useful. And that is the argument that Vaush is making. He says so after the debate.
All maps of the world rely on distortion, and in order to project a 3D surface onto a 2D plane, all of them lie in some way or another, you know? And none of them is right or wrong. There's no such thing as right or wrong, you know?
You can imagine Vaush as a map salesman. Hey, I'll give you $1 for this map of the world. Okay, that sounds fair. Here you go. Hey, that doesn't look quite right. Well, all maps are distortions. None of them are right. There's difference between the two sexes, and it leads to a lot of secondary sex characteristics that you see every day. And that's what we are trying to describe. It's the model that we found the most accurate representation of what we're trying to define. We find it useful to call water in a river water, even though it's not pure H2O. While there is some ambiguity there, if someone came along and tried to call Fanta water, we would all object, because its properties are so different that it warrants a separate word. And you're not going to convince me that this Fanta is a water. When things are similar enough, we group them together under the same definition. And there's many reasons that the biological definition for woman is a better one to use. It's a better model. It's intuitive, it's objective, it's consistent, and not just across humans. So while I'm saying that we definitely could use Vaush's definition, we could use any definition. The question is, why should we, when the majority of the population doesn't want to? 6 in 10 US adults say that a person is a man or a woman determined by their sex at birth. And that number has only increased from 2017, when it was at 54%. And Vaush does bring this up in the debate.
Of the fact that the majority of Americans today believe in accepting the identity of trans people by a slim margin. In 20 years, my view will be more popular than yours. Will you switch over then? Are you going to...
Even though that was never true, not in 2022 when this debate happened, and even less so now. But to answer the question from my perspective, no, I wouldn't switch over. I'd never say never. But in a social setting, I generally use my definition, the biological one. If someone wants me to call them a woman that I don't believe is a woman, I'll do it out of politeness. It's a case-by-case basis, I suppose, but when it comes to law and trans people in sports, I think it makes more sense to use the objective metric. Especially when it comes to sports, because your body is determined by your biological sex, not by how you feel. And I know, you can artificially put things in your body to make yourself more like the other sex, but that's not what you are. And in those cases, like law and sports, I don't care what the majority of people think. I think it's better to use the biological definition. It's more akin to a dictatorship than a democratic society that you can get in hot water for calling pregnant people women.
Malcolm Mystery, who was involved in the research, says that the aged pregnant people, women, and those with pre-existing health conditions.
You can get in trouble for using a definition that the majority of people think is true. Apparently, public schools can refuse to hire you based on this opinion. If we're gonna start enforcing this definition, should it not at least be the definition that the majority of people think is true? Why did Graham Linehan get arrested for his opinion, again, when it's shared by the majority of the people? Why is this Norwegian actress facing jail time for saying men cannot be lesbians, when again, the majority of people agree with her? In Ireland, we have our own infamous case with Enoch Burke, who was suspended from teaching because he didn't want to conform to this minority opinion. I'm not trying to enforce my definition on anybody. I'm not trying to take away their free speech, but for some reason, these elite left-wingers who pretend to stick up for the common man are trying to enforce their minority definition on us.
Can this be the title? Can we just cop the title since he copped the entire video? I mean, he did the content stealing, right? What Professor exposes Vaush in front of his own audience. You don't need to say pretentious leftist star because people who watch my channel will already know that's me.